this morning we're going to talk about truth. How do we defend the existence of truth? So I figured I'd start with one of my favorite verses, one that you know, where Jesus says, I'm one of the ways, one of the truths, and one possible life. If you want to go through the Father or the Mother to me, that's cool. Go forth leading according to whatever feels good to you. Did Jesus say that? Did Jesus claim to be one truth? Absolutely not. You know, there's at least 100 verses in the New Testament in which Jesus claims to be the only way to get to God. Jesus seemed to think that truth and what you and I believe about it is pretty important. So have you ever stopped and wondered, why is truth even important? Who cares? Why should you and I care about truth? Well, I was speaking at a conference some time ago on this topic, and a student came up to me afterwards. He said, Dr. McDowell, you're talking about truth the entire session. Why is truth even important? I said, well, do you want the true answer or the false answer? Now think about it. If you ask why is truth important, what do you already assume is important? Truth. It's inescapable. Friends, the Apostle Paul said, with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they do not receive the love of truth so as to be saved. Paul says people perish for eternity because they don't love truth. My question is, do you love truth? Do you love truth? Now, I'm going to give you 3 reasons as we start why truth is so important. Reason number 1 is because truth has consequences. Truth and what you believe about it has consequences for your life. My uncle is a pastor in Massachusetts, and he told me a story about a cousin of mine that I never met. Years ago, my cousin who was deaf was out walking on the train tracks near where he lived in Massachusetts. And he'd walk the same time every day. He got up in the morning going to walk, but it never occurred to him that they would change the time that the train came. So he believed it was true that he was safe. He was walking this direction. The train came behind him. He couldn't hear it, couldn't stop and sign, killed and hit my cousin because he had false information about truth. Friends, truth has consequences. If you have a headache in the morning and you haven't had your 3rd cup of coffee yet, and you pick something up a little blurry, you think it says Tylenol, but it says rat poison, consequences. Friends, truth has consequences. That's why Hosea, the minor prophet, said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. If you don't have truth, you'll destroy your health, you'll destroy your relationships, you'll destroy your church, your family. And our nation, if we keep suppressing truth, is going to get destroyed as well. Now, there's a second reason why truth matters. In fact, I'm going to ask all you to do this. Close your eyes right where you're at. Close your eyes. Even up in the cheap seats, close your eyes. Close your eyes, and with your eyes closed, point the direction you think is north. You're going on a journey. Everybody has to go. Do your best guess. Point the direction. Now, with your hands still pointed, open up your eyes and look around. This group right here has somebody pointing every single direction. No, I actually don't know what direction north is, but I can tell you it is not straight up like some of you are pointing. Every time somebody goes like this. Now, if you're trying to head up to Canada and you're confused about north, you're going to end up somewhere very different, right? So what might you have to help you know what direction north is? A compass or the app on your smartphone. Truth is like a compass for life. When we know what is true, we know what choices we should make. You see, some time ago, somebody in my life who's very important to me, I'm going to tell a story about this person, but I can't tell you who it is because I would never want to embarrass the woman who birthed me. My mom gives me permission, but my mom got a new computer and she decided to set up her own email account. Now, my mom is the kind of person, maybe you know this person or maybe you are this person, that when she gets instructions, follows every single detail to the letter of the law. Well, one of the first instructions that came up said, close all the windows. My mom, my own flesh and blood, got up from her chair, walked around the house, and closed all the windows in our house. My sister was in high school at the time. My mom came back and told her, and she fell on the ground and she cried because she was laughing so hard. Now you're laughing because you understand the joke, right? When your computer screen or tablet says close all the windows, it doesn't mean the physical windows in your house. You see, a computer or an iPad has been designed by somebody smart to function a certain way. And when we don't understand it or try to use it differently, what happens? Embarrassment, frustration, and anger. Friends, you know what's interesting about the Bible? Is the first thing we learn about God is in the beginning, God created. You see, if something's created, there's a truth about it. And there's a purpose about how it's supposed to operate. The Bible says in the beginning, God created. There's a purpose for marriage, a purpose for family, a purpose for sex. And it's when we know that purpose and that truth and we orient our lives around that truth that we're set free. That's what freedom is. Freedom is not doing whatever feels good to you. That's slavery. Freedom is aligning our lives with reality, living our lives according to God's design. So you can take your computer and try to make waffles on it or snowboard on it, but it's not designed for that, so somebody's going to get hurt. I think one of the biggest lies facing your generation is the nature of freedom. You're told as long as it feels good, do it. As long as you choose it, do it. Be authentic to yourself. You're not responsible to anybody else. And Jesus says no. He says no. It's actually when we know truth and we live the way God has designed us to live, that's when we experience freedom. Do you see why truth is so important? That's why Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. Lies bring slavery. Truth brings freedom. So not only does truth have consequences, but truth brings freedom. But third, believing's not enough. It doesn't matter how much you believe something. If it's not true, your beliefs are in vain. It doesn't matter how much you believe the Bible's true. If the Bible's not true, your beliefs are worthless. Nothing's true because you believe it. Don't believe me, trust me. You know how many times I believed I was 6'10" and in the NBA? I'm only 6'7" on this stage. I'm definitely not in the NBA. Friends, I believe there's $1 million in my wallet. It doesn't matter how much I believe that. Even if there were $1 million, my great state of California would take over half of it. Nothing is true because we believe it, but because truth has consequences. And because real freedom in life only happens when we know and follow truth, we better get truth right. In fact, Satan's whole first tactic is to feed lies into our lives. So what is truth? Have you ever stopped and thought, can I define what truth is? I'm going to give you a simple definition. And if you write this down and just think about it, it's going to serve you very well in your life. Here's a simple definition that philosophers give. It's called the correspondence theory of truth. In other words, a statement is true if it matches up with reality. So you have a statement or a belief or an idea, and if reality or the world is the way you describe it, then your belief is what? It's true. If it doesn't match up, your belief is false. That's it. Truth is when belief matches up with reality. So if I said to you, I drove here from California and it only took me about 18 hours, you know why? Because I drove here in my new red Lamborghini. And you go walking outside and you see this, my statement just might be what? Okay, just humor me. It'd be true. If you walked outside and see this, my statement would be what? It'd be false. Why? Okay, good, because I described it as red. In reality, it's yellow. If you walk outside and see the kind of car I actually drive, which is this, why are you laughing? I gave this talk one time, and an 8th grader goes, you drive a Ford. I was like, what do you drive? Man. Friends, my statement would be really false, because that's not close to a Lamborghini. See, I actually play this game with my kids. I like superheroes, if you didn't notice. You should see my keyboard when you get a break at a chance. It's seriously awesome. I'm dead serious. My keyboard is off the charts. You got to see it when you get a moment. But I take my kids and I'll put a word and an object. So that's Wolverine, that's Batman, and that's Spider-Man. Because the description matches up with reality, you have truth. Truth is when belief matches up with... Is that smoke coming up from... No, I'm just kidding. Now, what did you do when I said that? You looked back. Since there was no smoke, don't worry, Ed. My statement was what? It was false. If there was actually smoke for whatever reason, my statement would have been true. You see, this is how it works. We make statements, we have ideas, we hold beliefs. And if the world is the way we describe it to be, our beliefs are true. You might be sitting here going, you know what, Sean, that seems kind of obvious. And in a sense, it is. It's intuitive inside of us, but sometimes we don't think it through. You see, the reality is, everybody uses this definition of truth in everyday life. But when the topic shifts to moral values or religion, people will change what they mean by truth. So if I was going to ask you your favorite ice cream, I'm curious, what would some of you say? I heard chocolate, cookie dough, I heard vanilla, Rocky Road. Sherbet. Sherbet's not an ice cream. All right, so come back with me. Let me save us some time. I'm hearing a lot of answers. Let me save you some time. Are you ready? The best flavor of ice cream is chocolate peanut butter. Now, by a show of hands, who says that is true? Who says that is not true? Okay, all right, put your hands down. We find ourselves in a very interesting dilemma. How can the statement chocolate peanut butter ice cream be true for me, but not true for you? And the answer is because we're talking about something we call subjective. If something is subjective, it's personal and private and depends upon the beliefs of the individual. It's personal. In fact, the key word within subjective is subject. In a subjective claim, if you believe it, it's true for you. And if I believe it, it's true for me. So when you think of subjective claims, I want you to think of ice cream because ice cream preference is a matter of opinion based on whatever the person believes or thinks. Now, what if I said chocolate peanut butter ice cream controls diabetes? Usually I get an amen. Clearly there's no Baptists here. There it is. Now, this is a different kind of statement, isn't it? This is no longer a preference subjective claim. This is a claim about the objective real world. You see, this is what we call an objective claim. You see, objective claims are about the external world independent of what we believe. Subjective claims depend upon what you, the individual subject, believe makes it true for you. In an objective claim, it depends on the object or the world, and our beliefs can't change it. So you might think of subjective claims as internal and objective claims as external. So if I had a huge cup here of ice cream and I said, this is delicious, is that really a claim about the ice cream, or is it a claim about my experience of the ice cream? Yeah, that's my subjective experience of the ice cream. If I said this is 30 grams, that's not about my experience, that's about the object, the ice cream. So when you think of objective claims, I want you to think of insulin, because insulin is how we control diabetes. That's a claim about the real world. Now, I'm going to ask you all to participate with me, and we have 2,300 students here plus, so I need you to shout out your answer and then give me your attention right back, because here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put some statements up on the screen here in a second, and I want you to shout out one of two things very quickly. Are you ready? If it's a subjective claim, shout out ice cream. If it's an objective claim, shout out insulin. Now, I'm not asking if these claims are true or false. I'm simply asking, what kind of claim are they? So if it's a preference claim, shout out. If it's an objective claim, shout out. All right, good. Let's give it a shot. Ready? Ice cream or insulin? Coke tastes better than Pepsi. Ice cream. Even if you don't like Coke or Pepsi, that's a preference claim. Diet Coke has fewer calories than regular Coke. Okay, good. Now we're talking about a property of the soda itself, independent of what we believe about it. That's insulin, all right? 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, good. Mathematical claims deal with the objective real world outside of our minds. Excellent. Hawaii is the most beautiful vacation spot on earth. Ice cream, okay, good. We all know it's Southern California. Good. We have some Californians. All right, messing with you. All right, ice cream or insulin? George Washington was the first president of the United States. I heard mostly insulin on this one, and you're right. Now, this is not something you can see like smoke in the back. This is from the discipline of history, but we know there is a truth about the way the world is, or in this case, the way the world was, that our beliefs don't change. So you're right. Historical claims are like insulin. All right, action movies are more enjoyable than romances. Ice cream, okay, good. It's a matter of preference to what you like. All right, how about this one? Sean McDowell can bench press 300 pounds. Who says ice cream? Let me see your hands. Who says insulin? Who says, shh, after the 2016 election, I am never voting again? No, I'm just kidding. I'm messing with you. Just kidding. Now, notice something. There was a mix between ice cream and insulin. Remember, I'm not asking you if this is true or false. I'm asking you, what kind of claim is it? Now, is this an opinion claim that can be true for you but not true for me? Or is there a fact about this independent of what you believe? Do you see the question? Friends, there is a truth about this. Now, you don't know what that truth is. You have no idea if I can bench press 300 pounds or not. But there is a truth about it, and your beliefs don't change that truth. No, we could test it. We could throw some 45s up here and see if I can put it up or not, but there is a truth that your beliefs don't change. You want to know the answer? Here's the deal. I used to care before I turned 40. Now I just want to stay alive. So why is this important? Because we can have insulin claims for which we don't know the answer. So if I said there's 50 quadrillion zillion atoms in the universe, excuse me, that is an objective claim. We can't test it, we'll never know it, but it's a claim about the universe itself that's either true or false. So this is an insulin claim. How about this one? Earth is the center of the solar system. Insulin, okay, good. Now this isn't a historical claim. What kind of claim is it? Scientific, good. But it also happens to be false. So you can have a false insulin claim. If I said 2 + 2 = 5, that's about the real world, but it's false. Okay, so far you've told me mathematical claims, historical claims, scientific claims are like insulin. I want everybody to quickly give me your answer on this one. Ice cream or insulin, abortion is wrong. Who says ice cream? Show hands. Who says insulin? Maybe 50-50. Now, this is not a scientific claim. This is not a historical claim. This is a moral claim. Here's the question. Are moral claims more like ice cream that are matters of preferences? Or are moral claims more like insulin where there's an objective truth outside of us? That's the question. Now, not long ago, I was having a discussion with a fellow about the issue of abortion. He was pro-choice, and he said, look, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. I said, are you against slavery? He said, yes. I said, then if you're against slavery, don't own a slave. Let me ask you a question. Are we against slavery because we don't like it? Yeah, I prefer slavery. I don't. No. We're against slavery because we know it's objectively wrong to mistreat a human being based on something secondary like skin color. You see what that man did? If you don't like abortion, you don't have one. If you don't like chicken, get the fish. If you don't like coffee, have tea. As if the question of the morality of abortion is entirely a matter of opinion like ice cream flavor. Friends, think about this. If all moral claims are like ice cream, then you can't judge any moral behavior is wrong any more than you can tell me I like the wrong ice cream. You have no right to judge all the men who have sexually abused women and been brought to the surface by the Me Too movement if morality is like ice cream. You have no right to judge any act of racism if morality is like ice cream. You have no right to judge the president of Syria, who's probably slaughtered 500,000 of his own people, if morality's like ice cream. But guess what? No one actually believes that. We say we think morality's like ice cream because our culture has told us that may be true for you, but not true for me. It's all a matter of opinion, but no one actually believes that. You say, how, Sean, can you make such claim? One reason I can make claims is because that's what's in the Bible. Romans 2, Paul says, even those without the law know the law exists and can follow it because it's written where? On their hearts. It's written on their hearts. Friends, that means even people who don't believe in God are made in the image of God and know there's a right and know there's wrong. You want to know what someone believes about morality? It's not by what they say, it's not by what they do, but it's by how they want to be treated. Write that down. You know what someone believes about morality? Not by what they say, not by what they do, but by how they want to be treated. I tell my students, my high school students, I teach part-time, I say, if someone tells you there's no such thing as right and wrong, cut in front of them in line. What are they going to say? Hey, I got here first. And you say, okay, wait a minute. You seem to be appealing to this standard of fairness and justice that we're both bound to follow. If morality is a matter of opinion, then why should I give a rip that you got here first? Especially if I'm stronger than you. Friends, nobody actually believes morality is subjective. We know that it's subjective. So a number of years ago, this is probably a decade, plus years ago, two of my high school students came to me and they said, Sean, there's this. Actually, they didn't call me Sean. They called me Mr. McDowell at that stage because they were in my class. They said, Mr. McDowell, this public school across town, which is like 2 miles away. I was teaching the private school. There's a public school. Had this big free-thinking atheist gathering, and 100 students showed up to hear a talk on atheism. They said, what should we do? I said, well, what do you guys want to do? And they proposed to me that in our church, we'd have a public debate between 3 Christian students and 3 atheist agnostic students. And I moderated it. It was awesome. Our church was packed. People were along the walls, which was probably 400 people, but it was packed. And the students debated the historical Jesus, intelligent design and evolution, and morality. One of my students got up there and she said, we all know there's a right and a wrong. We know there's an objective moral standard. That's because there's an objective moral law, and that's because there's a moral lawgiver. Right and wrong points to the existence of God. Now, one of their students got up there, an agnostic kid, he was 16. He said there is no objective right and wrong. It's all a matter of opinion. You have your beliefs, we have ours. Really, morality is more like ice cream, and he sat down. But then it was time for the closing speeches. Now, in a closing speech in a debate, you're supposed to sum up your arguments, why your side wins, and why the other side didn't respond and they lost. What the student does is this atheist student walks up to the front of church, looks out over the audience of mostly Christians, and decides he's going to go off script. So he looks out the audience and goes, you know what, you Christians, you're a bunch of bigots, you're hateful, you're homophobic, and you're intolerant. Shame on you for your hatred. And he sits down. Do you notice something suspicious about this? 5 minutes ago, he said morality is a matter of opinion. There's no objective standard. And then he stands up and says, you hateful Christians have violated every objective moral law. Shame on you. You should have known differently. Do you see the contradiction? Why did he do that? His belief system says there's no such thing as right and wrong because he's an atheist, but he's still made in the image of God and couldn't escape it. My students didn't pick up on the contradiction, so I wanted to jump in and say to the students, hey, wait a minute, you contradicted yourself. You know why I didn't? Even though he said morality is subjective, he would have turned to me and say, that's not fair, that's not right, you're not supposed to step in, which tells me he really does believe in objective morality. Friends, we know moral questions are like insulin. By the way, if morality was like ice cream, what would that do to the gospel? Why would Jesus even have to die? There's no point, because there's no such thing as sin. Friends, look, here's the question of abortion. Let me frame this for us. So imagine you go home after Momentum. You get home and you decide that you're so thankful that your parents sent you to such an awesome conference that you decide you're going to do the dishes. Now, I know for some of you this takes a lot of imagination. So you go inside and you turn and you're doing the dishes. And your younger brother or sister who's maybe 5 or 6 walks in, and while your back is turned, they say, hey, bro, hey, sis, can I kill this? Now, before you say yes or no, what question would you ask? What is it? If you turn around and it's a roach, you'd say, yeah, go for it. If you turn around, it's a cat, you'd be like, hurry up, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Shameless humor. Shameless humor. I'm never going to get invited back. I will own it. Shameless humor. Don't harm animals. If you turn around and the kid has a cute bunny, you'd be like, why do you want to hear the cute bunny? What's wrong with you? If you turn around, the 5-year-old goes, hey, I picked this infant out of a carriage down the street. Can I kill this? You go, whoa, definitely not. And in fact, even though you're 5, the fact that you think you should harm a baby means you need some serious counseling. See, here's the principle. Listen very carefully. How we treat something depends upon what it is. That's why we treat a human being different than a rock or different than a roach. Do you know what the question with abortion is? What is the unborn? If it's just a bunch of tissue, then no justification is necessary. If the unborn objectively is a human being, then what justification is adequate? Friends, either the unborn is human or it's not. Either we're taking the life of an innocent human being or we're not. Our opinions don't change that. I think you realize with me that moral questions are more like insulin than ice cream. 2 more, ice cream or insulin. Jesus was a carpenter. Insulin, good. How about Jesus resurrected as proof he is divine? Oh, insulin, good. Now it's a historical claim tied to theology, and you're right. The claim of the resurrection is an objective claim. Either Jesus is God or he's not. Now, I hope you all realize that nobody dies and goes to hell just because they don't believe in Jesus. You realize that, right? Nobody dies and goes eternally to hell just because they don't believe in Jesus. Friends, according to the scripture, people die and go to hell because of a rebellion against their creator, because of a moral virus the Bible calls sin. And to say that Buddha or Krishna or Muhammad or Joseph Smith or any other figure can forgive my sins is like saying chocolate peanut butter ice cream controls diabetes. It doesn't work in the objective, real world. Do you know why Jesus is the only way? Because Jesus is the only one who fixed the problem that separated us from God. The problem is sin, and Jesus is the only one who paid for sin. Friends, if your car breaks down and you're out of gas, it doesn't do any good to rotate the tires or get a new transmission. Identify the problem and fix it. The problem is there's an objective moral standard grounded in God's character, and when we sin, we are separated from God. And Jesus is the only one who paid for sin. That's why Jesus is the only way. See, if you were there with Jesus, you could have actually seen him nailed to the cross. And you could have reached out and touched the cross and got a splinter on your hand and felt the trickle of warm blood that had a specific blood type. If you're there with Thomas, he's like, yeah, I'm not going to believe. You could have reached in and touched the spear wound in his side or the nail marks in his hand. If you're there at the empty tomb, you could have ducked down, seen a huge stone rolled away, stepped inside, smelled the scent of a musty tomb, and seen the linen cloth of Jesus laying there. That's why Paul writes, if Christ has not been risen, your faith is worthless. Christianity depends upon the testable, single, historical event of the resurrection. If it happened, Christianity is true. If it didn't, Christianity is false. That means Christianity is not true for me or true for you. Christianity is true or false, and either you believe it or you don't. But the problem today is people say, well, but other things feel true to me. What your generation is told, as long as something feels right, it must be true for you. Well, I'm going to show you a quick video of a friend of mine. You guys might remember these debates over bathroom bills recently, tied to gender issues. A friend of mine went on campus in Washington where this debate was taking place, and watch what he does. All he does is ask people questions and listen to their response and see how their worldview slowly falls apart.
There's been a lot of talk about identity lately, but how far does it go? And is it possible to be wrong? We went to the University of Washington to find out.
Are you aware of the debate happening in Washington State around the ability to access bathrooms, locker rooms, spas based on gender identity and gender expression?
I think people should be able to have access to the facility.
I think bathrooms could and potentially should be gender neutral because there doesn't need to be a classification for differences.
I think people definitely should have the ability to go into whichever locker room they want.
I feel like at least public universities should do their best to accommodate for those who do not have a specific gender identity.
You know, whether you identify as male or female and whether your sex at birth is matching to that, you should be able to utilize the resources.
So if I told you that I was a woman, what would your response be?
Good for you. Okay, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I'd be like, what? Really?
I don't have a problem with it.
I'd ask you how you came to that conclusion.
If I told you that I was Chinese, what would your response be?
I mean, I might be a little surprised, but I would say, good for you. Yeah, be who you are.
I would maybe think you had some Chinese ancestor.
I would ask you how you similarly came to that conclusion and why you came to that conclusion.
I would have a lot of questions just because on the outside I would assume that you're a white man.
If I told you that I was 7 years old, what would your response be?
I wouldn't believe that immediately.
I probably wouldn't believe it, but I mean, it wouldn't really bother me that much to go out of my way and tell you, no, you're wrong. I'd just be like, oh, okay, he wants to say he's 7 years old.
If you feel 7 at heart, then so be it. Yeah, good for you.
So if I wanted to enroll in a first grade class, do you think I should be allowed to?
Probably not, I guess. I mean, unless you haven't completed first grade up to this point and for some reason need to do that now.
If that's where you feel like mentally you should be, then I feel like there are communities that would accept you for that.
I would say so long as you're not hindering society and you're not causing harm to other people, I feel like that should be an okay thing.
If I told you I'm 6 feet 5 inches, what would you say?
That I would question.
Why?
Because you're not. No, I don't think you're 6'5".
If you truly believed you're 6'5", I don't think it's harmful. I think it's fine if you believe that. It doesn't matter to me if you think you're taller than you are.
So you'd be willing to tell me I'm wrong?
I wouldn't tell you you're wrong.
No, but I say that I don't think that you are.
I feel like that's not my place as another human to say someone is wrong or to draw lines or boundaries.
No, I mean, I wouldn't just go oh, you're wrong, that's wrong to believe in it, because, I mean, again, it doesn't really bother me what you want to think about your height or anything.
So I can be a Chinese woman.
Sure.
But I can't be a 6'5" Chinese woman.
Yes.
Okay, let me stop it right there. Do you all see what's going on? All he did was ask questions. He didn't make any statements. Part of what we're told in certain ideologies today is even though it violates biological truth, if you believe something different and feel that way, it's true for you. So we asked him if I said I'm a woman would be all right with it. They all said fine except one guy. He goes, what about being Chinese? Maybe. What about being 7 years old? Not quite sure. How about 6'5"? No, you're wrong. Now, if biology matters and you can't be 6'5", then if you're a male, you can't be a woman. If biology doesn't matter, then you can be 6'5", and you can be a woman if you're a man. You can't have it both ways. Friends, nothing is true because you feel it. In fact, if you live your life based on your feelings alone, you will destroy your life. Don't guard your mind by your feelings, guard your feelings by your mind. The last objection, people say, well, all religions are true. Do you know a majority of your generation would say, Jesus may be your truth, but not another. As long as you believe something sincerely, it's true for you. Well, there's a pretty obvious problem with this, and it raises a question, can all religions be true? Well, I put a little chart of this together. You can take a picture of it, or actually I'm going to make these slides all available to you afterwards if you want to, if it's helpful. But I put a simple chart together with the 5 biggest religions of the world: Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Let's ask the question, can all of these religions be true? Buddhists don't believe in a personal God. Many are atheists. Hindus believe in many gods. In fact, 330 million gods. Jews, one God, Yahweh. Muslims, one God, Allah. And Christians, one God in being who exists as 3 persons. Look at salvation. Can salvation be through enlightenment, reincarnation, the law, 5 pillars, and by grace? No. If it's by grace, it's not by the law. If it's by the law, it's not by grace. Friends, all religions believe they're uniquely true. Now, Hindus will say, oh, Christianity's true, but what do they mean by this? They mean Christianity is true if you take Christianity within the Hindu system, then it's true. So it's not true in its own terms, it's true on Hindu terms. Therefore, on its own terms, Christianity is actually false. Friends, every belief system thinks it's right and others are wrong. Even people who say all religions are true, and I'm not going to judge anybody, actually, if they say all religions are true, they're saying all religions are false on their own terms, and they're judging people who actually think they're right. You can't get away from it. Here's the reality. All religions could be false, but they could not possibly all be true. All these religions here could be false, but they can no more be true than I can have 1 head, 3 heads, 330 million heads, and no head. All religions could be false, but they can't all be true. Friends, Jesus didn't say, I am one way, one truth, and one life. He didn't say, hey, live according to however you feel. Jesus claimed to be the eternal God who came in human flesh and the gatekeeper to a meaningful life now and salvation for eternity. And he said, what you and I believe about him is the single most important decision we make for eternity. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Now the question is, how do we know this is true? Tonight, we're going to look at the question, how do we know that the Bible's true? So we see that truth is important. Now we're asking the question, how do we know that the Bible's true? I can't wait to unpack that with you tonight.